The first thing Victoria did after 10 years of marriage was slide a divorce agreement across the conference table and apologize for making me wait. Not for the years. Not for the birthdays she missed, the holidays postponed, or the nights I slept with my phone on my chest because she was somewhere I could not call. She apologized for the paperwork. "My attorney should have had this to you last week," she said. Her uniform was immaculate, dark green pressed into sharp lines, silver insignia catching the winter light from the courthouse window. The last time I had seen her in person, nearly 8 months earlier, she had been wearing field fatigues and carrying a duffel bag through our kitchen at 2 in the morning. Back then, she had kissed my cheek, promised the assignment would be the last long one, and told me we were finally going to have a normal year. Now she sat across from me with a legal pad, 2 attorneys, and a manila folder labeled with our names. Daniel Hart and Victoria Hale. 10 years reduced to black ink and staple marks. I read the first page. Then the second. Victoria watched me carefully. "Daniel, I know this is a lot." I kept reading. The house on Linden Row would remain mine because I had purchased it before the marriage and paid the mortgage from my separate account after our formal separation. Our joint savings would be divided according to the balance from the date we separated. My retirement accounts would remain mine. Her military retirement interest accrued during the marriage had been valued and offset against other assets according to the agreement our lawyers had spent 3 months negotiating. There were no children. No business interests to unwind. No hidden debt. No dramatic fight over furniture. We had already done the ugly administrative work by email and scheduled calls. Today was supposed to be the final signature before the judge entered the decree. Victoria folded her hands. "I didn't want you blindsided." That almost made me smile. I looked up. "By the divorce?" Her expression shifted. "By why I'm asking for it." Her attorney glanced down at the table. Mine, Martin Shaw, became very still beside me. I set the page flat. "All right." Victoria took a breath that looked rehearsed. "There's someone else." For 1 second, the heating vent was the loudest thing in the room. I had imagined this sentence before. Anyone married to absence eventually imagines every explanation absence can hide. An affair. A second life. A person who knew your spouse's daily habits better than you did. For years I had rejected those thoughts because trust was the bargain I made with distance. If I was going to resent every unknown hour, the marriage would have died much earlier. So I trusted her. Until she stopped giving me much reason to. "His name is Marcus Vale," she continued. I knew the name. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Vale had been in half the photographs Victoria sent from command events over the past 3 years. He was the man standing beside her at the promotion ceremony I watched on a delayed stream from our living room. He was the voice laughing in the background during a call she cut short because she had to get back to a briefing. He was the officer whose wife had died several years ago, a fact Victoria had once mentioned with such sympathy that I remembered buying a condolence card for her to take back with her. "How long?" I asked. Victoria's jaw tightened. "It isn't what you're thinking." "Then you can answer without worrying about what I'm thinking." She looked toward the window. "We became close over the last year." "Close?" "Yes." "And now you want to marry him?" Her eyes came back to mine. There it was. Not guilt exactly. Certainty. The kind she used to have when she explained why another course mattered, why another posting could not be refused, why one more year of sacrifice would put us in a better place later. "Eventually," she said. I nodded once. "Okay." That answer bothered her more than anger would have. "Okay? You want a divorce?" "Daniel, I expected you to have questions." "I had questions for years." She flinched. I turned to the final page. Martin leaned closer. "We've reviewed every substantive provision already," he murmured. "I know." He did not tell me what to do. That was why I hired him. Victoria's attorney uncapped a pen. I used my own. For a decade, I had signed deployment forms, emergency contact updates, insurance documents, powers of attorney, change of address forms, lease extensions, home repair approvals, and an endless parade of paperwork built around Victoria being somewhere else. My hand did not shake now. I signed Daniel Hart in the marked space. Then I dated it in words because the clerk had asked for long-form entry on this version. Victoria stared at my signature. That's it. I capped the pen. That's it. You're not even going to ask me to reconsider? Martin looked at me, then politely looked away. I studied the woman across from me. 10 years ago, I would have crossed a continent for her. 9 years ago, I had quit a project management track because her transfer made 2 careers in 2 cities impossible. 7 years ago, I spent Christmas alone after her leave was cancelled and defended her to my mother when she said a marriage could not survive on promises. 5 years ago, I refinanced the house to cover repairs without asking Victoria for a cent because she was preparing for a command course and I did not want money to become one more thing pulling at her attention. 3 years ago, I turned down a partnership at the engineering firm where I worked because it required travel during the only season Victoria expected to be home. 1 year ago, I finally stopped turning things down. That was the part she did not know. You made your decision, I said. I did. Then asking you to reconsider would just be asking you to lie. She sat back. For the first time that morning, uncertainty crossed her face. I never wanted to hurt you. I know. She frowned. Maybe she expected sarcasm. There was none. People can hurt you badly without making hurting you their goal. Sometimes they simply decide their goal matters more than the damage. The clerk knocked and told us the judge was ready. The hearing took less than half an hour. The judge confirmed we understood the settlement, confirmed neither of us was signing under pressure, asked the required questions, and entered the final decree. Victoria answered in the steady command voice I had heard her use on formal calls. I answered the same way I answered technical inspections at work. Clearly. Without extra words. When it was over, the judge wished us both well. The decree appeared in the county system before we reached the hallway. Martin checked his tablet and showed me the stamped final copy. You're legally divorced, he said. Victoria stood several feet away speaking quietly with her attorney. For a strange second, I felt nothing. Then my phone vibrated. One message. Rachel, I'm downstairs. I looked at the time. Martin followed my glance. You still sure? I slipped the phone into my coat pocket. More sure than I was yesterday. He studied me. You understand how this is going to look? Like I made a decision before this morning? Like you made it before your marriage was legally over? I did. Martin raised an eyebrow. About ending my marriage, I added. Rachel and I didn't cross that line while I was married. I know. Then I can live with how it looks. Behind me, Victoria called my name. I turned. She held the folder against her side. For the first time since we sat down, she looked less like Colonel Victoria Hale and more like the woman who used to leave coffee on my workbench because she knew I forgot breakfast. Can we talk before you go? I checked the hallway clock. Not today. Her eyes narrowed slightly. You have somewhere to be? Yes. More important than this? The old answer rose automatically. Nothing is more important than us. I had said some version of that for years. I let it die before it reached my mouth. Yes, I said. Then I walked away. Rachel was waiting near the civil services office on the ground floor. She wore a cream coat over a dark blue dress and held a small bouquet of white winter roses that looked almost embarrassed by their own beauty. Her auburn hair was pinned back loosely. When she saw me, she did not smile right away. She searched my face first. That was Rachel. Even when we were 20 and reckless, she had always looked for the truth before the celebration. Is it done? She asked. I nodded. Final. She exhaled. How do you feel? Like I've been carrying a suitcase so long I forgot it was heavy. Her eyes softened. We can go home. I knew what she meant. We can cancel this. We can wait. We can give grief more ceremony than love. I reached for her hand. No. Daniel. I didn't come here because I was running from Victoria. I know. And I'm not marrying you because I need to prove something. I know that too. Then stop giving me an exit every 30 seconds. That finally brought a small smile. Occupational hazard. Rachel was a family mediator. She had spent years watching people confuse panic with certainty. She knew exactly how impulsive this could look. Maybe that was why we had spent the previous 6 months trying very hard not to become a story anyone could dismiss as impulse. The marriage office had our electronic application prepared but pending proof that my prior marriage had legally ended. The clerk refreshed the county record, saw the final decree, and completed the license. There was no statutory remarriage waiting period in Willow County. Our witnesses were Martin, who had reluctantly agreed after making me repeat twice that he was acting as a friend now, and Rachel's older sister, Elaine, who had been waiting in the cafe across the square. The civil ceremony room was small. Wood paneling. A county seal. 2 rows of chairs. A vase of artificial lilies that had probably watched thousands of promises succeed and fail. By the time the officiant asked us to stand together, less than 10 minutes had passed since I left Victoria in the upstairs hallway. Rachel squeezed my fingers. Last chance? She whispered. You really know how to make a man feel wanted. Her laugh escaped before she could stop it. The officiant smiled. Then the door opened behind us. I glanced back. It was not Victoria. Just Elaine, rushing in with her scarf half tied and tears already on her face. I turned back to Rachel. At that moment, I did not know that Victoria would learn about the ceremony before lunch. I did not know she would refuse to believe it. I did not know she would drive across Belhaven like the city had personally betrayed her. I did not know she would arrive after the vows had begun. All I knew was that Rachel's hand was warm in mine. And for the first time in 10 years, the next sentence of my life did not depend on where Victoria had been ordered to go. The officiant began. I had met Rachel Bennett when I was 19 and convinced that certainty was something young people deserved. We studied mechanical systems at Northbridge Polytechnic, though Rachel abandoned engineering after 2 years and eventually moved into conflict resolution. I stayed with machines because broken machines were honest. They told you what failed if you knew where to look. People were harder. Rachel and I dated for almost 4 years. We broke up without betrayal, which made it hurt worse. She received a graduate fellowship in another province, and I had just taken an apprenticeship with a turbine maintenance contractor near Belhaven. We tried distance for 8 months. Then we spent one long phone call admitting that love was becoming a weekly appointment both of us resented. We said goodbye while we still liked each other. A year later, I met Victoria. She was 24, recently commissioned, and louder than anyone else at a charity repair project where soldiers and civilian tradespeople were rebuilding homes damaged by a spring flood. She handed me the wrong wrench 3 times, accused me of being too polite to correct her, and bought me dinner because she said incompetence should have financial consequences. I fell in love before I understood how ambitious she was. That was not a criticism then. It was one of the things I admired most. Victoria wanted responsibility. Not attention. Not luxury. Responsibility. She wanted to lead people well, be useful when things were difficult, and earn every promotion without anyone saying she received it because she was charming or connected. For the first few years, her ambition felt like something we shared. When she left for advanced training 6 months after our wedding, I drove her to the station at dawn and told her not to worry about me. When she came home 4 months later, we spent 3 days eating takeout on the bedroom floor because neither of us wanted to waste time cooking. When she was assigned across the country, I negotiated remote project work and moved with her. When my employer later required me back in Belhaven, we agreed to maintain 2 households temporarily. Temporarily lasted almost 9 years. There was always a reason. A course. An assignment. A command opportunity. A recommendation board. A temporary vacancy she could not refuse without looking uncommitted. A senior officer retiring early. A chance to lead a specialized logistics unit. None of those reasons were fake. That was what made our failure hard to name. There was no single moment when Victoria chose her career instead of our marriage. There were hundreds of smaller moments when she chose one more thing and trusted me to absorb the cost. I usually did. At first, willingly. Then proudly. Then habitually. Then resentfully. Finally, silently. The year everything changed began with a broken water heater. I came home from work one February evening and found water spreading across the basement floor. I shut the supply valve, moved storage boxes, called an emergency plumber, and spent 6 hours cleaning up. At some point, I found one of Victoria's old academy notebooks floating in a plastic bin that had cracked. I dried it page by page on towels. Inside the front cover she had written a list of things she wanted before turning 35. Lead a unit. Earn a field command. Buy a house with Daniel. Take Daniel to the coast. Have 1 year where we live in the same place. The last 3 items were still unchecked. She had just turned 37. I stared at that list longer than I should have. Then my phone buzzed with a message from her. Can't call tonight. Dinner with Vale and regional staff. Big week. Love you? I typed love you too. Then I deleted it. I wrote good luck this week. That was the first small thing I stopped giving her. Not love. Automatic reassurance. She did not notice. 3 months later, I received an offer from Kelston Aero Systems. They serviced industrial turbines and emergency power units throughout Belhaven County. I had consulted for them twice and liked the operations director. The position was senior maintenance planning manager, better pay, better hours, and a path toward partnership in their training division. 5 years earlier, I would have declined without discussion because Victoria was supposed to return that summer, and the new role included occasional overnight travel. This time, I asked for a week to consider it. Then I called Victoria. She answered from a vehicle. Hey, can I call you back? I got a job offer. There was a pause. A good one? Very. Then take it. I blinked. You don't want to hear what it is. Daniel, if it's what you want, I trust you. Someone said something near her. I heard Marcus Vale's voice. She laughed. I've got to go. I'm proud of you. The call ended. I stood in our kitchen holding the phone. For years I had wanted her to say exactly those words. If it's what you want, I trust you. Instead of freedom, they felt like evidence that my choices no longer affected her life. I accepted the job the next morning. Rachel re-entered my life 6 weeks later because of a pension workshop. Kelston had hired a mediation firm to help supervisors manage conflict during a restructuring. I walked into the conference room carrying coffee and saw her arranging handouts near the screen. She looked older, of course. So did I. Her hair was shorter than I remembered. There were fine lines at the corners of her eyes. She wore a wedding ring. That detail mattered. It allowed me to breathe. Daniel Hart, she said. Rachel Bennett. You still look like you judge people by their toolboxes. Only if the toolbox deserves it. She laughed exactly the way I remembered. We talked for 5 minutes before the room filled. I learned she had married a teacher named Owen Bennett, taken his surname, and been widowed 2 years earlier after a sudden heart condition. She learned I was married to a career officer who was rarely home. Neither of us crossed the line. Not that day. Not for months. Rachel conducted 3 workshops at Kelston that quarter. Sometimes we had lunch with the other managers. Once she asked if Victoria would attend the company winter dinner. I said probably not. Rachel simply nodded. She never asked why I stayed married. That restraint made me ask myself. By late summer, Victoria's calls had become irregular enough that I started writing dates in my calendar. Not to build a case. To stop wondering if I was exaggerating. 7 calls in 1 month. 4 the next. 2 the month after that. Most lasted under 15 minutes. Marcus appeared in the background of several. Once, Victoria answered from a restaurant patio. She was off duty. Marcus sat across from her. She turned the screen so I could see the mountains behind them and said their team had finished an exercise early. I asked why she had not told me she had a free weekend. Her face changed. It wasn't really free. You're at a restaurant. We still have after-action work. Tomorrow too? Probably. I could have come up. For one night? That's a 6-hour drive. I've driven farther for less. She sighed. Daniel, please don't make this a thing. I heard Marcus say he would get the check. Victoria lowered her voice. I have to go. Of course. Don't do that. Do what? That tone. I looked at the dark television across my living room. Enjoy dinner. She ended the call. I did not sleep much. The next morning, I opened our shared calendar and removed 3 weekends I had blocked for possible visits. Then I booked a hiking trip with 2 coworkers. That was the first time I stopped holding time open for her. She noticed that. 2 months later, she called and asked if I could come to a formal command dinner. I already had a certification course scheduled. Move it, she said. I thought she was joking. She was not. I paid for the course. Can't they transfer you? Probably. Then transfer. Why is this dinner important? Vale is being recognized, and general staff will be there. There it was. Marcus again. Is your presence required? No. Is mine? Silence. It would look good if spouses attended. I almost laughed. So after 10 years of missing my events because the army needed you, you want me to miss my training because the army doesn't need me but would like the optics. That's unfair. Is it inaccurate? You're making this about old grievances. No. I'm making it about Thursday. I can't come. She went quiet. You always come. The sentence stayed with me. Not I want you there. Not I miss you. You always come. A description of service, not love. Not this time, I said. She hung up angry. 3 weeks later, she asked for a separation. Not a divorce yet. A separation. She framed it as honesty. We were living separate lives, she said. We needed space to decide whether staying married out of loyalty was fair to either of us. I listened. Then I asked the question I had avoided. Is Marcus part of this? She took too long. He's my friend. That's not what I asked? Nothing physical has happened. That's also not what I asked? She became defensive. Daniel, I don't know what you want me to say. The truth would be efficient. She rubbed her forehead. I care about him. That was enough. Not because emotional attachment automatically ended a marriage. Because I recognized the tone. She had already spent months defending the relationship to herself. I could hear the argument she had prepared before I knew there was an argument. He understands my work. He is there. We have been through difficult things together. You and I have grown apart. None of those statements would be completely false. That was the tragedy. I agreed to separate. Then I called Martin Shaw. My first question was not how to punish Victoria. It was what I needed to protect. The house was mine from before marriage, but marital contributions had funded some improvements, so we documented them. Our joint savings was straightforward. Her pension rights were more complicated, but Martin referred me to a specialist who explained the valuation without pretending the law was simple. We froze no accounts we did not individually control. We cancelled no cards without notice. We did not play games with mail. I transferred my salary to my personal checking account and left enough in the joint account to cover shared obligations until the agreed separation date. Victoria did the same. It was boring. It was also the first honest thing we had done together in years. Rachel learned about the separation because Kelston scheduled another mediation session, and she noticed I no longer wore my ring. She did not ask during work. Afterward, she found me near the elevators. You okay? No. Do you want coffee? Probably. We sat in a bakery across the street for almost 2 hours. I told her the broad version. I did not show her Victoria's messages. I did not insult my wife. I did not ask Rachel to tell me I deserve better. She listened. At the end, she said, "Don't make any permanent decisions just because someone else made one first. That's annoyingly sensible. It's literally my job. You were annoying before it was your job." That became the beginning of our friendship again. Nothing more. For almost 3 months, we saw each other in groups or public places. She introduced me to Elaine again. I introduced her to Martin and 2 friends from Kelston. We talked about grief more than romance. Her husband had died while they were planning a kitchen renovation. There were paint samples still taped behind a cabinet because she could not bring herself to remove them. I told her about Victoria's notebook from the flooded basement. Rachel did not say Victoria had never loved me. She said something harder. Maybe she loved you and still kept choosing a life that had less and less room for you. I stared into my coffee. Those things can both be true? People are inconvenient that way. By winter, Victoria had filed for divorce. Her message arrived while I was replacing a vibration sensor on a backup generator at a hospital complex. I read it standing in a mechanical room with ear protection around my neck. I think we need to make the separation permanent. I called her after work. She answered immediately. I didn't want to do this over text, she said. Then why did you? I needed you to know before the paperwork arrived. All right. She waited. That's all you're going to say? Do you want me to fight you? I don't know. I leaned against my truck. Snow moved through the parking lot in thin sheets. Victoria, if you want me to convince you to stay married, you have to at least want to be convinced. Her breathing changed. I care about you. That's not the same thing. I know. Are you with him now? Silence again. Not physically, she said. I closed my eyes. You keep answering the question you can defend instead of the one I'm asking. I love him. There it was. Cold air filled my lungs. I expected pain to feel sharper. Instead, something inside me became very quiet. Okay, I said. Daniel. I'll have Martin contact your attorney. Can we talk about us first? You just did. She sounded angry. 10 years and that's it? I looked through the windshield at the hospital lights. No. 10 years is why this is it. I ended the call. Rachel and I crossed the line 2 months later. Not dramatically. No hotel room. No desperate kiss in the rain. We were sitting in her kitchen assembling a shelf because she had ordered one online and the instructions appeared to have been translated through several hostile languages. She handed me a screw. Our fingers touched. We both stopped. "We shouldn't," she said. "No." Neither of us moved. "Your divorce isn't final." "I know." "And you're lonely." "Also true." "And I'm still learning how not to compare every man to someone who's dead and therefore cannot disappoint me." "That sounds unfair to the living." "Very." I let go of the screw. "Then we don't." She nodded. I went home. For another month, we did nothing. Then Victoria's attorney sent a revised settlement proposal that removed several aggressive provisions her first draft had included. I later learned Marcus had encouraged her to make the process clean because he wanted no public mess attached to her upcoming promotion review. That detail should have enraged me. Instead, it clarified something. Even our divorce had become part of Victoria's career management. I told Martin to negotiate firmly but fairly. Then I stopped reading meaning into every email. Rachel and I began dating after Martin confirmed our formal separation agreement allowed independent personal lives and after I told Victoria directly. I did not need her permission. I told her because secrecy was one habit I refused to carry into whatever came next. She was silent for so long I thought the call had dropped. "Who?" "Rachel Bennett." "Your college girlfriend?" "Yes." "You've been talking to her this whole time?" "Since last summer." Her voice hardened. "So you had someone too?" "No." "Daniel, don't insult me. I was friends with her while we were married. I started dating her after you filed for divorce and after we formally separated." "Convenient." I almost answered defensively. Then I remembered I did not owe her a trial. "You asked who?" "I told you." "Did you love her while you were married to me?" That question deserved honesty. "Not the way you're asking." "What does that mean?" "It means I remembered loving her. It means being around her reminded me what it felt like to be included in someone's ordinary life. It means I kept boundaries because I was still your husband." Victoria inhaled sharply. "And now?" "Now I'm figuring it out." "You're moving fast." I looked at the calendar on my office wall. We had been separated nearly 8 months. "Maybe from where you're standing." She hung up. After that, the divorce became smoother on paper and stranger everywhere else. Victoria began calling more often. At first, she claimed there were practical questions. Did I want the framed photograph from her commissioning? Was I keeping the walnut dining table? Did I still have her grandfather's pocket watch in the safe? Then the practical questions became memories. Do you remember the cabin near Grey Lake? Do you remember the terrible motel outside Cairn Ridge? Do you remember the night the power went out and we cooked pasta on the camping stove? I remembered all of it. I just stopped treating memory as an argument. One evening, she asked whether Rachel stayed at my house. "Sometimes." "In our bedroom?" I looked around the room. The walls had been repainted. Victoria's dresser was gone. The old quilt her mother gave us was boxed and waiting to be shipped to her sister. "It's not our bedroom anymore." She became very quiet. "Right." Then she surprised me. "I'm sorry." "For asking?" "For making that sentence true." I had no answer ready. "Good night, Victoria." "Good night, Daniel." When her promotion was announced in early spring, I found out from a public bulletin before she told me. Colonel Victoria Hale would take command of the Regional Logistics Brigade headquartered at Fort Arden. Fort Arden was several hours from Belhaven, and the position was not small. It was the kind of command she had wanted since she was 24, and handing me the wrong wrench at a flood repair site. I stared at the announcement longer than I expected. Then I sent one message. Congratulations. You earned it. She called immediately. You mean that? Yes. Even now? Your promotion and our marriage are different things. Her voice softened. Marcus says the same? The name landed without the old force. Then he's right about one thing. She gave a short laugh. I wish you hated me. Why? It would make this simpler. I sat at my kitchen table. Rachel's book was on the counter where she had left it the night before. I don't hate you. I know. I just don't want to be your husband anymore. That hurt her. I heard it in the silence. For months she had assumed divorce was her decision and my acceptance was merely compliance. I think that was the first time she understood I had made the same decision independently. 2 weeks later, Rachel and I talked about marriage. She brought it up because she did not want it hanging over us as an invisible question. We were walking beside the canal in Westmere Park, where the trees had just started budding. I'm not asking, she said. That is usually what people say before asking. I'm warning. More romantic. She bumped my shoulder. If we keep doing this, I need to know what you're doing. Walking badly? Daniel. I stopped near the railing. Water moved dark and slow below us. I'm with you. I know. I'm not using you to get over her. I believe you. Then what's the warning? Rachel looked down at her hands. I was married before. You were married before. Neither of us gets to pretend marriage itself fixes fear. If you ever asked me, I need it to be because you want the boring parts too. The insurance forms. The grocery lists. The resentment conversations before they become disasters. I smiled slightly. You make vows sound thrilling. I've mediated enough divorces to know the exciting parts are rarely the problem. I reached for her hand. I want the grocery lists. She looked at me. You say that now. I have strong feelings about produce. She laughed. Then I became serious. I don't know when. Good. Good? If you'd said next week, I would have pushed you into the canal. I kissed her forehead. There. The final divorce hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks later. By then, Victoria and Marcus had become publicly visible enough that several friends had stopped pretending not to know. I did not ask for details. I knew they attended a military foundation event together. I knew he had been seen at her new residence near Fort Arden. I knew his teenage daughter liked Victoria, because one of our mutual friends mentioned it without realizing the sentence might sting. What surprised me was that it did not. I wanted Victoria to build the life she had chosen. I just no longer wanted to be the foundation she left beneath it. 3 weeks before the hearing, Rachel and I got engaged. There was no surprise photographer. No restaurant applause. We were in my garage because I was restoring an old bench vise that had belonged to my father. Rachel was reading on a stool near the door. I had bought the ring 2 weeks earlier and hidden it in a drawer under a set of micrometers, which was either clever or evidence that I remained fundamentally unromantic. I wiped grease from my hands. Rachel. She looked up. If this is about dinner, I'm not cooking. Marry me. Her mouth opened. I held out the ring. That was not a smooth transition. I panicked. She stood. You. Apparently. Her eyes filled. Your divorce isn't final. I know. So this is a future question. Yes. And if the hearing gets delayed? We wait. And if Victoria changes her mind? I did not answer quickly. Rachel watched me. She doesn't get to change mine, I said. That was the answer Rachel needed. She held out her hand. Then yes. We told almost no one. Not because it was secret. Because I had learned the value of allowing a decision to exist before everyone else touched it. Elaine knew. Martin knew. My mother knew and cried for 15 straight minutes before asking whether Rachel still hated mushrooms. She did. We planned a small civil ceremony for the afternoon of the divorce hearing, assuming the decree became final. If it did not, we would go to lunch instead. Rachel refused to let me frame the schedule as symbolic revenge. If any part of you wants her to find out and suffer, we wait, she said. I don't. Say it again. I don't need Victoria to know anything for this to matter. Rachel studied me. Okay. You believe me? Yes. I'm still going to ask uncomfortable questions until we're 80. I assumed that was included in the license. The morning of the hearing, Victoria texted me from the courthouse parking lot. Can we talk before we go in? I replied that we could talk with counsel present. She did not like that. This isn't a legal question. Then it can wait. When I entered the conference room, I understood why she wanted privacy. Marcus had apparently ended whatever future she thought they were building. She did not tell me immediately. I learned that later. But I could see something had changed. She looked tired beneath the perfect uniform. There were shadows under her eyes. Her phone kept lighting up face down on the table. She ignored it. Then she told me there was someone else and expected the revelation to land like a bomb. What she did not understand was that the explosion had happened months earlier. Today was paperwork after the fire. I signed. The decree became final. I walked downstairs. I married Rachel. And upstairs, Victoria began learning that Marcus Vale had never intended to leave his own complicated life for hers. I did not know that yet. The officiant asked Rachel to repeat her vows. She kept them simple. I choose you as you are, not as I imagine you'll become. Her voice trembled once. I promise to tell you when I'm angry before I decide what your silence means. Elaine wiped her face loudly. I promise to make room for your work without making myself disappear inside it. That line hit me harder than I expected. Rachel squeezed my hand. And I promise that if either of us starts confusing sacrifice with love, we'll say it out loud. The officiant turned to me. I had written something the night before and then thrown it away. The words I used were simpler. I spent a long time thinking love meant being willing to wait. Rachel's eyes held mine. I don't think that anymore. My throat tightened. I think love is also showing up, making room, telling the truth, and noticing when the other person has been carrying too much. I heard the door behind us. Footsteps. Fast. Then silence. I knew before I turned. Victoria stood in the doorway. Her uniform coat was open. She had clearly run from somewhere. Her face had lost all color. One hand still held her phone. She stared at Rachel. Then at our joined hands. Then at me. Daniel! The officiant looked uncertain. Rachel did not release me. I turned fully. Victoria took one step into the room. What are you doing? It was such an absurd question that nobody answered at first. Elaine rose from her chair. Martin remained seated, but his posture changed. I looked at Victoria. I'm getting married. You can't. Her voice cracked. We just got divorced. Yes. 10 minutes ago. About that. She stared at me as if numbers might save her. This is insane. Rachel's hand tightened around mine. I could feel her pulse. Victoria looked at her. Recognition arrived slowly. Rachel. Rachel nodded. Victoria. You're his first girlfriend. That was a long time ago. Victoria laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. So this is what? Revenge? I felt the old instinct to calm her. To protect her dignity in front of strangers. To move the conflict somewhere private because Victoria hated losing control publicly. Then I remembered whose ceremony she had entered. No. Daniel, look at this. I am. You expect me to believe you signed our divorce and walked downstairs to marry someone else by coincidence? I didn't say it was coincidence. Her eyes widened. You planned this. Yes. The word struck harder than any insult. While we were still married. While we were separated, after you filed for divorce, after you told me you loved Marcus, and after we had negotiated the settlement. You were waiting for the ink to dry. So were you. She opened her mouth. Closed it. Rachel spoke quietly. Victoria, we're in the middle of a ceremony. Victoria turned on her. Stay out of this. I stepped slightly between them. No. Victoria stared at me. I had never used that tone with her before. Not loud. Not angry. Final. You don't tell my wife to stay out of her own wedding. The room went still. Wife. Technically not yet. Emotionally, the word had already crossed the distance. Victoria's face folded for half a second before she forced it back into place. Your wife. Yes. You haven't even finished the vows. Then let us. She shook her head. You can't do this to me. There was the sentence I had waited 10 years to stop obeying. I'm not doing this to you. How can you say that? Because this decision isn't about you. She looked almost offended by the possibility. 10 years, Daniel? I know. You waited 10 years for me. I breathed in slowly. That's exactly why I'm done waiting. Her eyes filled. I made a mistake. The words came so softly I almost missed them. Martin looked down. Rachel did not move. What mistake? I asked. Victoria swallowed. Marcus. Of course. There it was. The timing. The urgency. The phone lighting up upstairs. I understood before she explained. He ended it? Her face tightened. It wasn't like that. Did he? She looked at the floor. This morning. I felt something that might once have been satisfaction. It passed quickly. Mostly I felt tired. I'm sorry. Her head snapped up. Don't. Don't what? Don't pity me. I'm not. Then stop acting like this doesn't change anything. I stared at her. Why would it change anything? Because I was wrong. About him. She opened her mouth. I continued. Were you wrong about wanting the divorce when you filed? I don't know. Were you wrong when you told me you loved him? Daniel. Were you wrong when you spent months building a life that assumed I would eventually step aside? Tears finally broke free. I thought I knew what I wanted. So did I. She stared at me. You wanted me. I did. The past tense landed between us. Victoria looked physically unsteady. Please don't finish this. Rachel inhaled beside me. I turned to her first. That mattered. Are you okay? She looked at Victoria, then back at me. I'm not the one who gets to decide what you need to say. I don't need to say anything else. I faced Victoria. You should go. Daniel. Please. She looked around the room as if someone might support her claim. Nobody did. Elaine's expression was hard. Martin's was professionally neutral. The officiant had the look of a person who had seen unusual weddings before but was privately ranking this one very high. Victoria took another step. If you ever loved me, give me one day. One day. I almost laughed. 10 years of waiting compressed into one final request to wait. No. She flinched. Why? Because you don't get to ask me to stop my life every time yours changes. The truth settled over the room. Victoria wiped her cheek angrily. So that's it? For our marriage? Yes. The judge already said so. I mean us. I looked at her for a long moment. Us ended before today. She stared at me. Then she turned and walked out. The door closed softly. Rachel exhaled. Nobody moved for several seconds. Then the officiant cleared his throat. Would you like a moment? I looked at Rachel. She studied me with the same searching expression she had worn downstairs. Do you? She asked. I thought about it. My hands were steady. My chest hurt, but not with doubt. Grief can exist beside certainty. That was another thing I had learned too late. No, I said. Rachel nodded. We turned back to the officiant. I finished my vows. When he pronounced us married, Rachel kissed me while Elaine cried and Martin clapped once before apparently deciding lawyers should not display that much emotion in public. Outside the courthouse, snow had started again. Rachel and I stood beneath the stone awning while Elaine took photographs with her phone. I kept expecting to see Victoria near the curb. She was gone. Rachel noticed me looking. You worried? A little. About her? Yes. Rachel nodded. She did not punish me for caring. That was one of the reasons I married her. Do you want to call someone who can check on her? I considered it. Then I called Victoria's younger brother, Nathan. He knew about the divorce but not the wedding. He answered on the second ring. Everything final? Yes. You okay? I am. Victoria isn't. Silence. What happened? She came downstairs after the hearing. There was a difficult conversation. Daniel. Nathan, I'm asking you to check on her. Why me? Because I'm not the right person anymore. He heard the boundary. All right. Thank you. I hung up. Rachel slipped her arm through mine. Ready? For what? Lunch. We're married, not dead. I laughed. Then we crossed the square toward a small restaurant where my mother was waiting with a cake she had been explicitly told not to buy. Victoria did not call that day. She called the next morning. I was in Rachel's kitchen making coffee. We had decided not to move immediately. For the first few weeks, we would split time between our homes while deciding what made sense. No dramatic merging of closets. No symbolic bonfire of old photographs. Ordinary logistics. My phone showed Victoria's name. Rachel glanced at it. Your call. I answered. Hello? Victoria's voice was hoarse. Nathan told me you're actually married. Yes. I thought maybe the ceremony hadn't been legal yet. It was. You got the license that fast? The application was already prepared. The clerk verified the decree and issued it. She made a sound halfway between a laugh and a sob. Of course you had it prepared. I poured coffee. What do you need, Victoria? I need you to tell me how long. How long what? How long you've been planning to marry her. I leaned against the counter. We got engaged 3 weeks ago. Silence. 3 weeks. Yes. While I was preparing to take command. The old framing again. Her milestone as the calendar everyone else lived beneath. Yes. You didn't tell me. We were divorcing. You told me when you started dating her. Because I wanted clean boundaries while the divorce was pending. An engagement wasn't information you needed to negotiate property. She breathed hard. You really thought all of this through? I had time. That sentence hurt her more than I intended. Because I left you alone. I did not rescue her from it. A lot. She was quiet. Then she said, Marcus wasn't what I thought. I closed my eyes briefly. You said that yesterday. You don't know what happened. I don't need to. He told me he loved me. I'm sure he did. He said we could build something once the divorce was final. I waited. Yesterday morning, he told me his daughter is struggling and he won't disrupt her life. He said he needs to stay near her mother's family and he doesn't want the scrutiny of being with his commanding officer once my promotion becomes official. There were several practical problems in that sentence. They were all predictable. I'm sorry you're hurting. Stop saying you're sorry. Then what do you want me to say? That you understand. I looked at Rachel. She had moved to the far side of the kitchen to give me privacy. I understand what it feels like when someone asks you to build your life around their priorities and then changes the plan. Victoria went silent. I regretted the sharpness immediately. Not because it was false. Because I did not want cruelty to become my new form of honesty. That was unnecessary, I said. No. Her voice cracked. It was accurate. I said nothing. Did I really do that to you? There are questions that sound like requests for information but are actually requests for absolution. This one was not. For once, Victoria sounded like she genuinely did not know. Yes, I said. Not every time. Not because you didn't love me. But yes. She started crying quietly. I stood there with the phone to my ear and remembered dozens of calls when I had hidden my own disappointment so she could focus. This time, I did not fix it. I have to go, I said. To her? To my mourning? That answer mattered too. My life was no longer organized around which woman occupied it. Goodbye, Victoria. She whispered goodbye. The first practical consequence of marrying Rachel was paperwork. Of course it was. Insurance updates. Emergency contacts. Beneficiary designations. A new will drafted with an attorney because neither of us wanted old documents creating future chaos. We kept our houses for the time being. Rachel's was closer to her office. Mine had a larger garage and better kitchen. We spent an embarrassing amount of time comparing closets. None of it looked like revenge. That helped. I went back to work on Monday. Kelston's operations director, Priya Noland, called me into her office. She had already heard. Belhaven was large enough for privacy and small enough to punish anyone who relied on it. You got married? Yes. 3 days after telling me you needed Friday off for a divorce hearing? Same day. She stared. I'm not sure whether to congratulate you or order a psychological evaluation. Rachel already did the evaluation. Priya's eyebrows rose. Rachel Bennett? Hard now, apparently. You married the mediator. It sounds worse when you say it like that. She laughed. Then her expression became more serious. You okay? I am. Really? Really? She nodded. Then congratulations. Also, the training division proposal is approved. I blinked. For the past 6 months, I had been developing a program to train maintenance planners for remote industrial sites. It was the kind of work I had wanted to build for years but never pursued because Victoria's schedule made my own long-term plans feel provisional. Approved? Board vote Friday. We want you leading it. I sat back. Travel? Some. How much? Enough that you need to talk to your new wife before you say yes. I almost answered automatically. I can make it work. Instead, I smiled. I'll talk to her. That night I did. Rachel asked questions about frequency, notice periods, and whether remote weeks could be scheduled around her mediation calendar. She did not say yes immediately. She did not say no either. We put our calendars on the table. We negotiated. It felt absurdly intimate. You know, I said, Victoria and I never did this. Rachel looked up. Don't compare. I'm not saying you're better. Good. I'm saying I didn't know this was an option. Her expression softened. Planning together? Yeah. Very advanced marital technology. I laughed. Then we decided I would take the role with two conditions I planned to negotiate with Priya. I got both. For the first time in years, career growth did not feel like a threat to my relationship. It felt like a problem two adults could solve. Victoria's command ceremony happened the following month. I received an invitation because spouses had been included when the guest list was prepared before our divorce became final. The envelope arrived at my house addressed to Colonel Victoria Hale and Mr. Daniel Hart. I stared at it. Then I forwarded it to her new address with a note. This came here by mistake. Congratulations again. She called that evening. You should come. No. As a friend. I sat on the back steps watching Rachel plant herbs in a raised bed she had decided my yard desperately needed. We're not friends yet. Yet. Maybe someday. She breathed out. I wanted you there for all the wrong reasons before. That caught my attention. What reasons? Because you made me look stable. Rachel glanced over, sensing the change in my posture. I looked away from her. That's honest. I told myself I wanted you because you were my husband. Part of that was true. But I also knew senior officers noticed who had a steady home life. You were good at those events. You remembered names. You talked to spouses no one else noticed. You made me look like someone who had figured out balance. I swallowed. I didn't know that. I didn't either. Not until I had to explain to the protocol office why you weren't coming. What did you tell them? The truth. That we're divorced. And? Nobody cared nearly as much as I thought they would. There was bitter humor in her voice. I gave up pieces of us to satisfy an audience that wasn't even watching. I had no useful response. I'm sorry, she said. Thank you. Will you at least watch the stream? I considered it. I don't think that's healthy for either of us. Right. She sounded disappointed, but she accepted it. That was new. After we hung up, Rachel sat beside me. You okay? She apologized for something specific. That's usually more useful than apologizing for everything. I think she's starting to understand. Rachel picked dirt from under one fingernail. That doesn't create an obligation for you. I know. I know you know. I'm still saying it. I leaned against her shoulder. Thank you. Victoria's regret did not arrive all at once. It came through inconvenience first. Her new residence near Fort Arden had no one arranging repairs while she traveled. No one renewing her vehicle registration. No one reminding her that her father's birthday was coming. No one mailing gifts to nieces from both of us. No one managing the dozen invisible tasks I had done because someone had to. At first, she tried to outsource everything. A cleaning service. A personal assistant for professional scheduling. Automatic bill payment. Meal delivery. None of that replaced the deeper thing. Not labor. Witness. Someone who knew why a certain date made her quiet. Someone who could tell from 3 words in a text whether she was angry or scared. Someone who remembered that she hated being congratulated before results were official because she considered it bad luck. Marcus had known some of those things. Not all. I knew because Victoria started sending messages she immediately regretted. Do you remember the name of that mechanic near East Hollow? Never mind, found it. Do you know where Mom's pie recipe is? Sorry. I shouldn't ask. What was the hotel we stayed at after the flood project? Ignore this. I usually ignored them. Not to punish her. Because answering every question would recreate the same dependency with a new label. Nathan called me one Saturday. She's having a rough time. I was in the garage with Rachel sanding an old cabinet. I figured. She's not sleeping much. Is she safe? Yes. Working too much. Being miserable. You know her. I do. He hesitated. She thinks you replaced her before you left. I put the sander down. That's not what happened. I told her. Thank you. She keeps saying nobody marries someone 10 minutes after a divorce unless the marriage was already over. I almost smiled. She's right about that part. Nathan went quiet. When did it end for you? I thought about the flooded basement. The notebook. The restaurant patio. You always come. The call when she said she loved Marcus. There was no single answer. Slowly. She thinks it happened when Rachel came back. Rachel showed me what I was missing. She didn't create what was missing. Nathan exhaled. Can I tell her that? If you want. You really don't want her back. It was not a question. No. Even if Marcus never existed? That was harder. I considered it honestly. If Marcus never existed, we might have stayed married longer. I don't know if that means we would have been happy. She won't like that answer. Neither did I. I ended the call and returned to the cabinet. Rachel looked at me. You don't have to tell me. I know. Are you going to anyway? Probably. I told her. She listened. Then she said, I need to ask you something selfish. Go ahead. If Victoria had come downstairs before the ceremony and said she wanted you back before we started the vows, would you have left with her? I stared at the cabinet between us. There are questions marriage deserves before resentment starts inventing answers. Rachel had promised to ask them. No. You didn't hesitate much. I thought about that before I proposed. Her eyes searched mine. And if she had said it 6 months earlier? That answer took longer. Maybe. Rachel nodded slowly. Thank you. Does that hurt? A little. I'm sorry. Don't be. I don't need a rewritten history where you were always destined for me. I need the truth about when you chose me. I reached across the cabinet and took her hand. I chose you before I asked you to marry me. I know. She squeezed my fingers. Keep doing it. That was the whole marriage, really. Not one choice. Repeated choices. Victoria had taught me that accidentally. By midsummer, my training division at Kelston was operating. I traveled twice a month, usually for 2 nights. Rachel traveled occasionally for mediation conferences. We synchronized calendars. Sometimes poorly. We had our first real married fight over a cancelled weekend at the coast. I agreed to cover an emergency training session after another manager's father became ill. Rachel found out after I had already said yes. You decided for both of us, she said. I felt defensive immediately. It was an emergency. For him. Not for us. His father is in the hospital. I'm not saying you shouldn't help. I'm saying you should have called me before giving away our weekend. The old script rose. This matters. You should understand. It's only one weekend. I heard Victoria's voice and my own past silence at the same time. I stopped. Rachel crossed her arms. What? You're right. Her eyebrows lifted. That was suspiciously fast. I have extensive field experience with this exact mistake. She tried not to smile. Doesn't mean I'm not still mad. You should be. We rearranged the weekend. I covered one day. Another manager covered the next. Rachel and I went to the coast a month later. It was not dramatic. It was better. We corrected the pattern before it became a story about who mattered more. Victoria's first major command exercise made regional news. I saw a photograph of her online because Priya forwarded an article about emergency logistics. Victoria stood in front of a map board, serious and composed, explaining how her brigade had restored supply access after a simulated infrastructure failure. She looked exactly like the person she had worked so hard to become. For a moment, pride moved through me. Then grief. Not because I wanted her back. Because I remembered the young woman with the wrong wrench and the list in the academy notebook. She had achieved almost everything on it. Just not the parts with me. That evening, she sent me a message. Saw Kelston's training program announcement. Congratulations. I replied. Thank you. Congratulations on the exercise. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Finally, I watched your interview twice. You look happy. I did not know what answer she wanted. So I gave her the truth. I am. She did not reply. Months passed. The intensity faded. That surprised me. There had been years when Victoria occupied more mental space from 600 miles away than Rachel now did while sitting across from me. Not because I cared less about Rachel. Because security is quieter than uncertainty. I did not spend evenings wondering when Rachel would call. If she was late, she texted. If work changed, we discussed it. If she was angry, eventually she told me. I did the same. Love stopped feeling like vigilance. In early autumn, Victoria asked to meet. Not urgently. Not secretly. She sent an email because she said she wanted to give me room to decline. She would be in Belhaven for a military logistics conference, and wondered if I would have coffee in a public place. I showed Rachel. Do you want to go? She asked. I think so. Then go. That easy? No. She smiled faintly. But trust that requires surveillance isn't trust. I met Victoria at a cafe near the river. She was in civilian clothes. Jeans. Gray sweater. Hair tied back. Without the uniform, she looked younger and more tired. We hugged awkwardly. Not romantic. Not exactly friendly. Human. We sat. How's Rachel? She asked. Good. How's married life? I smiled slightly. Administrative. That made her laugh. For a few minutes, we talked about ordinary things. My mother. Her brother. Kelston. Her command. Then she set down her cup. I owe you an apology that isn't designed to get anything. I waited. I used Marcus as an explanation because it was easier than admitting what I had done before him. That was not what I expected. What do you mean? I told myself I fell in love with someone else because our marriage had already become distant. She looked out the window. What I didn't want to admit was that I helped make it distant every time I assumed you'd still be there later. I said nothing. Marcus understood my work, she continued. That part was real. But he also fit into the life I had already built. I didn't have to change anything for him at first. He was already at the dinners, Already at the exercises. Already working the same hours. She laughed without humor. I mistook convenience for compatibility. Maybe it was both. She looked at me. Still defending me. No. Just refusing to simplify you. Her eyes filled slightly. You always did that. I took a sip of coffee. Sometimes too much. Yes. She accepted it. That mattered. I also owe Rachel an apology, she said. For the courthouse? For treating her like she stole something from me. I nodded. You can write to her if you want. She can decide whether to respond. Victoria looked relieved and ashamed at once. Thank you. We sat quietly. Then she asked, Are you ever going to forgive me? I thought carefully. I think I already have, mostly. Her face changed. Then why does that make me feel worse? Because forgiveness isn't a door back in. She looked down. Right. I don't wake up angry anymore. I don't need you punished. I don't need Marcus to regret anything. I don't need your career to fail. But you don't want me. No. She closed her eyes for a moment. I keep thinking if I had understood 6 months earlier, maybe things would be different. She looked at me quickly. I continued before Hope could turn that sentence into something else. But we don't live there. She nodded. No. When we stood to leave, she hesitated. Daniel. Yeah? Were you happy with me? The question hurt in a clean way. For a long time. Tears rose in her eyes. So was I. I know. We hugged again. Then we walked in opposite directions. Rachel was reading on the couch when I got home. She looked up. How was it? Sad? Useful sad or destructive sad? Useful. She closed her book. I sat beside her. She wants to apologize to you. Rachel groaned softly. Do I have to receive personal growth from your ex-wife? I laughed. No. Good. She leaned into me. Maybe someday. That's what I told her. Look at us, being emotionally mature. Disgusting. I kissed her hair. Winter came again. A full year had nearly passed since the courthouse. The anniversary of my divorce and wedding were, inconveniently, the same day. Rachel and I debated what to call it. Efficiency Day, I suggested. Absolutely not. Administrative Renewal Day. Worse. The day Daniel made several legally significant choices. She threw a pillow at me. We decided not to make the courthouse itself sacred. Instead, we took the day off and drove to the coast. The trip Victoria and I had once written in a notebook and never taken. I considered not going for that reason. Then I realized avoiding a place because of an old promise was another way of letting the past own it. Rachel and I stayed in a small inn overlooking a cold gray beach. We walked until the wind hurt our faces. At dinner, she gave me a folded piece of paper. What is this? A list. My chest tightened before I opened it. Things before we are 50. Take a train somewhere either of us has been. Build the greenhouse Daniel keeps pretending we do not need. Let Rachel choose the paint color in at least one room without engineering review. Spend one holiday doing absolutely nothing useful. Have 1 year where either of us treats being busy like a moral achievement. At the bottom she had written, leave room for changing our minds. I looked up. You saw the old notebook. You told me about it. This feels dangerous. Because lists are cursed? Evidence suggests it. She smiled. Then we'll treat this as suggestions, not a contract. I folded the paper carefully. I like the greenhouse. I knew you would. The paint provision is reckless. Marriage requires courage. We laughed. My phone buzzed once on the table. A message from Victoria. I did not hide it. Rachel glanced at the screen and looked back at her dessert. I opened it. I know today is complicated. I hope you're happy, Daniel. Truly. I read it twice. Then I answered. I am. I hope you are building something good too. Her reply came a minute later. Trying. That was enough. The following spring, Victoria came to Belhaven again and met Rachel. Not because anyone forced a reconciliation. Because Nathan was getting married. He invited all of us. I offered to decline if my presence would make things harder. Nathan told me to stop being dramatic and said he wanted both of us there because we had both been family to him. Rachel and I attended. Victoria arrived alone. She had dated once since Marcus, briefly, but was not seeing anyone now. At the reception, she approached our table during a quiet moment. Rachel stood. For a second, all three of us remembered the courthouse. Then Victoria said, I owe you an apology. Rachel tilted her head. You do? Victoria almost smiled. I came into your wedding and treated you like an obstacle. You weren't. I was angry at the consequences of my own decisions and aimed that anger at you. I'm sorry. Rachel considered her. Thank you? Victoria looked surprised. That's it. Did you want a mediation session? I charge by the hour. Victoria laughed. I laughed too. The tension broke. Rachel's expression softened. For what it's worth, I never thought Daniel stopped loving you because I appeared. Victoria looked at me, then back at her. He told you that? No. I could tell. How? Rachel took my hand. Because he was careful with me for months. People don't protect a marriage they've emotionally abandoned unless some part of them still respects what it was. Victoria swallowed. Thank you for saying that. Don't make me regret it. Wouldn't dream of it. They did not become friends. That would have been too neat. But afterward they could occupy the same room without history demanding a performance. That was enough. Years later, people still occasionally asked how I managed to marry someone 10 minutes after my divorce. The question always made the story sound like a trick. A punch line. A revenge fantasy with a stopwatch. The truth was slower. I did not leave Victoria in 10 minutes. I left by degrees. One cancelled weekend. One dinner I was not invited to. One promotion I celebrated alone. One phone call where I stopped saying love you automatically. One job I accepted without arranging my life around her schedule. One calendar I stopped keeping open. One separation agreement. One honest conversation with a woman from my past who did not ask me to rewrite my present. One choice after another. By the time I signed my name in that courthouse conference room, the hard part had already happened. The signature did not end my marriage. It recorded the ending. And the ceremony downstairs did not prove I had never loved Victoria. It proved loving someone once does not obligate you to wait forever for the version of them who might someday choose you back. Rachel and I built the greenhouse. It leaned slightly because I insisted I could frame the south wall without checking the foundation twice. Rachel never let me forget it. I led Kelston's training division for 6 years, then became a partner. I still traveled, but I never again assumed someone else's flexibility was mine to spend. Rachel changed careers once more and began teaching mediation at a small professional college in Belhaven. We fought about money twice, my mother 4 times, and thermostat settings with embarrassing frequency. We apologized badly sometimes. Then better. We never became perfect. That was not the promise. Victoria continued her career and eventually moved into a strategic command role. Her name appeared in professional journals. She became the kind of officer young recruits sought out for advice. According to Nathan, one piece of advice became famous among people who worked for her. Never make the people who love you prove it by surviving your absence. The first time he told me, I sat quietly for a long moment. She says that? All the time. I looked across my backyard where Rachel was arguing with a hose fitting. Good. Nathan studied me. You proud of her? Yeah. He smiled. You know that's weird, right? Probably. Rachel okay with that? Rachel is capable of understanding more than one emotion at a time. From the yard, Rachel shouted, I heard that, and I expect it engraved somewhere. Nathan laughed. I went outside to help her. The greenhouse door stuck in humid weather. The west shelf always tilted under heavy pots. The basil had taken over one corner like an invading army. Rachel handed me a wrench. The wrong size. For 1 second, I was 24 again, standing beside Victoria at a flood-damaged house while she grinned and accused me of being too polite to correct her. The memory came warm, not sharp. Rachel noticed my expression. What? I looked at the wrench. Wrong size. Then why did you take it? Old habit. She rolled her eyes and passed me the correct one. I tightened the fitting. Water stopped leaking. Simple problem. Visible cause. Reparable consequence. People were never that easy. But I had stopped needing them to be. That evening, Rachel and I ate dinner on the back porch while rain tapped against the greenhouse roof. My phone stayed on the table between us. Not because I was waiting for anyone. Because I was not. There had been a time when I thought loyalty meant keeping the light on until someone came home. Now I knew better. Sometimes loyalty means turning the light off, locking the door, and admitting the person you were waiting for chose another road. Sometimes forgiveness means wishing them well without reopening the house. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do after 10 years of waiting is not to wait one more day.